In the last video, I mentioned file formats. When we mix down a song, we end up with a new audio file, and that audio file has an extension. It's a kind of file. It's some sort of file type. So if you see a file and it says .jpeg or .song for a Studio One file or .mp3 for an audio file or whatever it happens to be, that's what I'm talking about, a file format. So we can mix down our song into a variety of file formats, and we're just going to talk about the most important ones right now that we're going to be working with. The first kind of format is an uncompressed format. Now, compression can mean a variety of things. In the case of a mixdown or an audio file, what compression means is trying to make the file size smaller. Uncompressed audio files can be quite large, like say 70 megabytes, depending on the length of the song, to 100 megabytes or 200 megabytes if you have a very long song, and also dependent on a couple other factors. The great thing about uncompressed file formats is they are an exact replica of your what you're hearing inside of Studio One. So they're a perfect representation or recreation, a perfect mixdown of the audio that was generated inside Studio One. This is great for creating master files, meaning files for your archive that you probably won't upload to the internet or send to people, but it's a full quality file that you can keep, and you can convert that file into other files in the future, or if you want to send that full quality file to someone, you can do that as well. When talking about uncompressed files, there's two main kinds really, .wav files and .aif files. Now, .wav files were usually they came from the Windows side, let's say the PC world, and .aif came from the Apple or Mac side, but they're basically the same and they're both used widely these days. They really are equivalent, other than .aif files can store some metadata, that means like album art or some other information about your music in them, where .wav files can't. So in a certain way, .aif files might be preferable, but really they're equivalent. So these two file formats are possibilities for us to mix down into from Studio One. So it's good to know that they're equivalent. I'm going to be using .aif files for my mixdown. You can use .aif if you like. You can also use .wav files. It doesn't really matter to me. What's important to know is that those files are uncompressed, meaning they're exact replicas of what's in your session, but at the cost of having big file sizes. The next category of audio file would be compressed audio files. These are files where, using certain computer algorithms, they're able to bring the file size down to very small numbers, like 3 megabytes to 7 megabytes, 12 megabytes, something like that, versus 70, 100, 200. And they do this at a cost. The more compressed an audio file is, the more information gets lost, the more of the audio information gets lost. Now, there's very intelligent and interesting algorithms that are used to make that file size small. We're not going to talk about that kind of stuff now, but suffice it to say that a .mp3 file is the most common kind of compressed audio file, and is the one we're going to be working with most often. MP3 files come in a variety of compression levels, like you can compress them more or less depending on how small you need the file to be versus how good you want it to sound. The smaller the file size, the more information is getting lost. But a high quality MP3, or the highest quality MP3 that you can get, is for most people indiscernible from a WAV file or an AIF file. So it's not a huge deal. You can compress to what's called a 320 MP3, and most people will still perceive that as being full quality, and this is normally what gets shared on the internet, on YouTube, SoundCloud, when you download music, all this kind of stuff. You're getting these compressed formats to keep file size down, which is good because you can fit more files on your phone or your iPod, and it's smaller to send in an email or whatever you want to do with it. So compression is a good thing, but too much compression can cause you to lose detail in your music. The specifics of that aren't important to us right now. What's important to know is that MP3 is the compressed format we're going to be using. WAV and AIF are the uncompressed formats that can be used. There are many other kinds of files that can be created, but we're not going to talk about them right now. You're going to come to know about them unavoidably as you progress in your music career. If you start watching tutorials on YouTube or look at what people are saying on forums online or whatever, people are going to mention all kinds of other formats. You may be interested in that and you can look them up. For our purposes right now, it doesn't matter, and it would be kind of a bad use of our time to go into all that. But if you want to know more about it, you can certainly check it out yourself and make your own decisions about what kinds of formats you want to use, when you want to use it, for what purpose, and so on. So in short, what file type should you use with your Mixdown? Well, when you're going to create a master file, like one that you're going to keep for your own records, that's full quality, I would use an AIF file. And if you're going to create a compressed one to share with people or upload or do whatever you want with it, then I would create an MP3 file. We're going to look at how to do that very shortly. First, we're just going to talk about a couple other parameters that you're going to see when you go to mix down your song. One of those is called sample rate, and the other is called bit depth. We've talked about them very briefly in the past, but we're just going to do a review of them because they do appear in the dialog box where you need to mix down your song, so it's good to know what they mean and how to deal with them.